This episode of The Construction Record is brought to you by the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association. Clean water is everybody's business.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Halloween special of the Construction Record podcast. This is Vince Versace, National Managing Editor of the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce, joining you today as we explore a lot of key fundamental things that you should be exploring around Halloween on construction sites. And I have three paranormal experts when it comes to construction with me. So, Warren, why don't you start the introductions?
I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, or Warlock Frey, and with we have Lindsey Cole and Peter Kenter. You can get your own spooky names.
Oh man. Okay. Well, yes, it's Lindsey Cole, editor of the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce. We'll go with Lindsey Coven Cole, as I'm part of
nice.
which is cult.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, on to you.
See, I was already going to take Peter Cult Kenter with a K. But you already know that for me.
Well, you can have Warren Cults. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I'm taking it. I'm a long-time writer for Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce, and also a very well-versed student in the supernatural.
Yeah, you are a resident paranormal expert, quite frankly, when it comes to doing tie-ins of what's haunted in construction. And you delivered some gems for us in the past, Peter. And you were on this podcast last year when we talked about spooky movies, right? So
we talked at length about spooky movies, probably a little too much, frankly. But
well, the thing is, as we do these things, and why we have this talk too, is, you know, you can see the links during a fun time like Halloween. There are construction stories that are relatable in some way, right? So it's kind of neat to kind of get together and just gab a little bit. Because, you know, the world's a scary place, and we've been living in a scary place for a couple of years now with the pandemic. And why not bring some lighthearted fare? I'm still working on my nickname.
Paranormal activity every day.
Yeah.
Vince Vampire Versace. Come on.
Yeah, is it as simple as that? The Vince Vampire Versace, Vince the Vamp? I don't know.
Vlad
Versace. Vlad Versace, yeah.
Vlad Versace.
Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad Versace. Okay. All right. I'll roll with that. But I was hoping maybe, Peter, you can, you once again filed a haunted Halloween story for us for the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce. So I'll let you and Warren kind of walk us through this next little stage about what the story was about and some clips that you collected as well.
Okay, so what I did in this case is I've talked about horror movie tie-ins before, but this year I wanted somebody who really has actual experiences with the supernatural. So I went to the AMI TV program Sight Seers, which is a supernatural investigation documentary, and I spoke to Mark Joly, one of the co-hosts. He's a self-described psychic and modern-day oracle, and he talked with me about two particular cases involving construction where there were paranormal activities going on.
And what were these paranormal activities? Paranormal's in quotes, by the way.
Yes. The first one was a place called New Ross, Nova Scotia, and I was really unaware of this storied history, but it's 30 kilometers from Oak Island, that treasure-seeking site that people have dug to pieces over and over again and never really found anything valuable. But
literally seasons upon seasons of TV shows have been Oak Island.
But there's a place called New Ross Castle, and what it is, there's a lot of disagreement about what it is actually. But nonetheless, there is on this property owned by two people. It's on their property, and it is on the adjacent property. It is a large foundation that some people believe was a place called New Ross Castle, And the people who believe it say it was built by the Knights Templar in 1398, even before Columbus ever arrived in America.
Sure,
And,
sure.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
reporting, and I think everybody else's reporting antenna just went up when you said that. But okay.
Now, on the other hand, on top of that, the Holy Grail was something that they took along with them.
Well, of course it was. Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, well, who am I to dispute this, right?
Yeah.
So,
Try
who
to
are these
disprove it,
people?
right? That's the thing.
Alessandra and Timothy. Well, that's what they said on the show, though. We
Mhm.
report, you decide. So
Okay.
these two homeowners purchased the land, and they started hearing all sorts of things like disembodied voices, holding conversations, drill bits disappearing and returning. Only if they asked for them to return, then they would show up. Doors that repeatedly open and close on windless days. And one that I was a little skeptical of, that they received enormous bills from the electrical utility even when the main breaker was off, because to me that's not supernatural. That happens to me all the time.
I was going to say that's the one part of the story I'm buying into completely.
Exactly. So the idea about what Mark does in this case is he's been blind since birth. He does readings. So he does readings of the area, try to figure out what kind of psychic energy he's contacting with, and then he will also touch the hand of the person who witnessed the supernatural activity and decide, are they hallucinating, are they lying, or are they accurately reporting what it is that they say they see. But in Mark's opinion, do you want to start off with a clip talking about
Sure,
those moving
absolutely.
drill bits there, Warren?
Yeah, we've got several clips, but here's the one about the moving drill bit.
Now, in this case, watching at the beginning of the show, the homeowner was recounting drill bits moving around and unusual voices. I mean, if we're talking about drill bits moving from one place to another, why?
Well, in most hauntings, okay, it's like there's obviously people who died on the property. Okay, there is a house on the property, like a modern house on the property. But they, like underneath there could be graves, it could be, but it is, and we all felt it too. Like where that stone was very close to where the house was. Like it was only 20 feet away from the house. So yeah, it really felt like this energy coming up from the ground. So yeah, like in a lot of hauntings, it has to do with somebody died on the property or somebody was strongly attached to the property. So yeah, we believe that, like again, if it's a castle, there's probably battles that were fought. So wherever you find, like people who have died and buried correctly and nobody's doing anything around them, that's one thing. But if you're dealing like with a battle where, 50, 100 or 500 people died, yeah, you're going to get their energy from that ground. So I don't know that people were buried exactly where that house was, but again, it whatever structure's on there is going to carry the energy. So I just think it's like in this case, it's the energy of many soldiers or knights died defending this property.
Does that mean anything if your drill bit moves from one room to the other? Is that directed, or is it a message to the homeowner?
It is often a message, yes. Okay, it is. It's sort of, you are disturbing us would be what the message is, or you are disturbing, our remains. You're disturbing, that like. If it is like, if there's somebody who's got a natural death, well, that's one thing. But if somebody's killed, that's like, and the rest of their life energy goes down with them. So, not poltergeist is what that's called, when things move from one place to another.
Yes.
And you do get that when you've got restless souls. It's sort of like if you build your house over a graveyard, yeah, you're going to have stuff floating in the air, and you're going to have stuff flying by, and you're going to have stuff moved around. The significance about things moved around is really a message to, to say, this is my spot, okay, or this is my area, and it will move things around that they don't want there.
Well, moving drill bits sound like a nightmare for anybody on a construction site, supernatural or not. But there's more to it than that, Peter. So maybe you could lead us into the next clip, which is about somebody killed on a construction site.
Yeah, essentially, Mark then says that, yes, the Knights Templar, or at least knights of some sort, did live on the property at some point. And he believes that it was a castle, and his vision was that there was a knight that was killed on this site by being pierced by a lance during a battle. He also felt that there were a lot more people killed on the site, but this clip talks about what he perceives happened in 1398 and beyond to create the ideal situations for haunting. You were saying that you had some sense that maybe that somebody had stabbed another person in the shoulder.
Yes, I did. Actually, it was funny. It was a joke between me and the producer, or me and the director. She said my nickname was Bloody Mark. She said, every time you read, there's blood and gore. But indeed, what I saw a knight, like a knight shining armor kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I saw he was lanced in his left shoulder. Okay, and I saw, and it was his death. Okay, because he died on that property, and like his energy has remained. Like that was one of the very first images that I saw.
And it's a great story, a castle being in Canada in 1398, but is there any evidence besides the story of his, which I guess technically isn't evidence, about this incident occurring?
The incident of the person being killed in the 1400s.
Mm-hmm. Although also the castle part of it sort of twigged my radar too, to be honest.
There are actually notable tunnels that have been discovered through ground penetrating radar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm told there was a large rock that had a symbol of the Knights Templar on it, and the foundation. There were photographs of the foundation that was there. So that's as much as you can actually see and know yourself. Well, that's why they called them in. Because
That's
they couldn't
true.
see any more than that.
Yeah. It's sorry to be a skeptical reporter. I can't help it. It's part of the job description.
Yeah.
So you also have another clip about the Halifax Club and dark energy. So maybe you could explain what this dark energy thing is all about.
Oh yes, this piqued my interest in Kenter's story for sure. It was very interesting.
So what happens here is that on another program, he goes to the Halifax Club, and the Halifax Club was, if not the only building standing, one of the few buildings that were left standing after the Halifax Harbor explosion in 1917. So Mark's feeling on this is that when all these people, 2,000 people, suddenly died, there was a complete dislocation of their life energy, and he feels it was impregnated into the walls of the Halifax Club. Now, in most cases, what he says is that when he goes into a place, he will get the feeling that something is haunted, but in kind of a pleasant way, not unpleasant, so that, well, perhaps the spirit is restless. Perhaps the spirit doesn't wish you were around here. Perhaps he wishes the place weren't under construction. But the spirit is generally giving you gentle reminders. But when he walked into the third floor of the Halifax Club, where additionally he felt that a girl was thrown out of the window and murdered, there was a report of that, he didn't like this place, and although they said that they were going to renovate it at one point, he said, don't. So that sets up the next clip. Do you ever get a case where, let's say, some construction happens, or even where you're saying, this is not good, the feeling I'm getting here is very bad, maybe you should consider not going forward with this?
So, there's places that you go in and it's really obvious. And, the most part when it comes down to opening walls and doing renovations or, digging a foundation, that's when it sort of disturbs the souls if they're there.
When it gets to that level, you might actually feel uncomfortable yourself.
There's only one place, and that was the Halifax Club, that up on the third floor. We were there because many years ago it was said that a girl was thrown out of a window. But on that third floor, I got a really bad vibe. And so, I was there, but, I made a beeline out of there. It would just had such a bad vibe to it. And, they were talking about renovating it and opening it up. I wouldn't do that. But, both myself and Laura were both, it felt like a thick, black energy, okay? And it was all over the building. And again, this is, in the Halifax explosion, this was the building that was left standing.
Sure.
And so there were, and that's why I say, all this, all the people who died going up the harbor, okay, and going up the hill and so on, and hitting this building, it was, it was like 1,000 people had died kind of thing.
Yeah.
That on its way, and the energy was thick, and it was dark. Nobody was comfortable.
And so, Lindsey, you're the first person after Peter wrote it to read this story. So what were your impressions of all this dark energy and moving drill bits?
Well, I have to say I am fortunate. I always get to see the preview article before it comes out, so it's something our whole team looks forward to every year, which is really cool. But when I read it, I was obviously I had to chuckle, honestly, at the moving drill bits, because to me, I wouldn't pick drill bits. If I'm going to haunt something on a construction site, I'm probably going to pick something more significant on the tool spectrum. But hey, maybe they wanted to be a little bit subtle, these paranormal people. But on the whole, I think it's really interesting, Peter. Kudos to you. It's not an easy task to try to find, legitimate sources, so to speak to how construction can disrupt paranormal and cause paranormal activity. So I thought that was really cool. And it actually did give me a little bit of the willies when I was reading about the Halifax Club stuff. I mean, you do hear psychics and mediums get really bad vibes sometimes. And I don't know. I always think it's really interesting, just as a viewer and somebody who's definitely not psychic, to see what those bad vibes really mean. So kudos, Peter. Nice job.
Thank you.
And it's from the Halifax explosion, which is just inherently terrifying to begin with.
Absolutely.
So that lends it. I don't know if it lends it credence, but it definitely lends it atmosphere. Let's put it that way.
You got to wonder about that whole province then, if all of this stuff is, being unearthed. Sorry, I had to. You have to wonder what's really going on there.
And as somebody from Western Canada, I'd never heard of this area, which apparently has been dug, I hate to use the term, but dug to death.
One interesting thing that didn't make the article is that Mark told me that in Nova Scotia there are, because of all the treasure seekers and people who want to find these secrets, there is some kind of a law in most of the provinces. You can't dig deeper than a few centimeters without seeking a full historical review of the area, which is quite costly. That prevents people from digging for treasure everywhere.
So it's basically dial before you dig, except for treasure
exactly.
instead of utility lines.
Dial before you dig and pay $10,000 to have somebody come by and do the historic review.
Yeah, absolutely. That's you know what, I could see that though. I do think there's actually something to be said for the fact that there is quote unquote evidence of at least something in this location with the tunnels and the, supposed Knights Templar symbols and whatnot. That does lend itself to a colorful history. So regardless of what the heck's actually happening there, at least there's evidence that to some extent that there was something there, which oftentimes in these shows there may not be. So
they did go through one additional process, which was to call a home inspector to take a look and say, is there anything likely causing this? So he did a thorough home inspection and said, well, actually what he said was there's no ghost here, but really what could he honestly say about it except there's no physical explanation in this home for the hauntings that these people have experienced.
Yeah, fair enough.
Two things. One that yes, when I heard about the symbols and the rest of it, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm wrong here. But my first instinct as a reporter is to doubt everything. But two, I want to find a home inspector who is able to find ghosts. That'd be very convenient.
That is a whole new type of building inspector. I think that's great. Oh, well.
So speaking of duties, of duties on the job, we talked about this before the podcast. We want to know what the roles are, the various monsters, famous or otherwise, on the job site. So I think my pick was that Cenobite Pinhead would be an architect because A, he kind of is an architect of pain, and B, he's very haughty and has a very high opinion of himself and his works. So not all architects are like that, but they have a certain reputation.
Architects or engineers, right?
Or engineers, yeah. And he's also an engineer, again, of pain. So what are some of your takes for Lindsey first and then Peter of who would do what on a job site? And Vince, of course, yes.
Well, I have to say, I think one person that's been noticeably absent from our discussions about the monster construction crew is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, let's be honest here. He's really good at wielding a heck of a weapon, and I think that he would be really useful on some sort of logging project. And then I also thought that would be pretty interesting, maybe in a foreman role, or at least some sort of other direct on the tools duty would be Carrie from Stephen King's Carrie. I mean,
do not get her mad, though. Do not get her mad.
Don't get her mad, but she could really be useful and efficient on site. She wouldn't be physically necessarily in someone's way. I think that really works for the pandemic and social distancing. So I would have to say that those would be my two, picks, if you will, for my construction crew. So,
would she drive to work in Christine is my question.
Yes, of course. So yeah, with that, Peter.
Well, I would say that one of them, he's not really a monster, but he is part of that Universal movie monster cast of characters. I would put the Invisible Man as the foreman. First of all, because he provides that complete transparency that all construction companies are looking for in their management.
Oh, dear.
And for the second reason is that essentially he can watch whatever you're doing whenever you're doing it. So safety inspections, he's got you. Building inspections, he's got you. Nothing will actually escape his glance. And the other thing is, of course, whether or not he's there, they always think he's there anyway. So I think that would be, it'd be perfect.
But I got a question for you on that, Peter, though. I mean, don't you think his role would have to be collectively bargained into some labor agreements? You know what I mean? Can't you see possibly some union somewhere arguing, that it's unfair oversight of some kind?
Well,
they're not wrong.
Well, it could be that they would try to argue it out of. I think what you would need to do is, maybe they would want him to carry some kind of badge or something like that. So that he would
just floats in the air with nothing else there.
Yeah, it would be somewhat visible, but still.
Or just a hard hat floating in the air.
Yeah, I love that. That'd be great.
Which you
Well,
should
you
be
have
wearing
to wear
anyway.
it. You should
Yeah,
be wearing
exactly.
it
Now, the
anyways.
one thing is, I would say if I were a construction crew and saying, okay, this is not right, the Invisible Man should not be supervising us or providing supervisory duty. I think the best argument from the union side is this man is walking here naked.
That's also a good point. That's not safe at all.
No, exactly.
Yeah, no work boots? What the heck? Or
Mm,
maybe
mm, mm,
all you'd see is the work boots. I don't know.
That's fine. I just work boots and a hat. That's all I need to see. My other pick would be, for safety's sake and or lack thereof, is zombies, because they're dead anyway. So you can just all the unsafe stuff, have them do it, or just have them run towards it. And then if play more where that came from, just get them to bite somebody else. So anyway, Vince, what do you think?
Well, I'm kind of back to when we were writing the introductory note for the promotion of the podcast. I think the vampire plays an interesting role. Because even now, with a non-monster construction crew on a project, you'll have people make comments about GCs and subs, categorizing them or describing them as vampires of some kind. Well, as soul suckers or something else that we can't really say because it's a family-rated podcast, But really, the vampire, the ideal GC, or is he more of a sub? And I think that's something, it depends what your perspective is on the project. He probably has trouble working during the day, so he'd have to be on some of those 24-hour construction sites, right? As a vampire, because he can't be there during the daylight at all, right?
Well, in some ways, some crews would probably prefer that. So
Yeah.
Unless he's working modular construction, in which case he can work 24 hours.
Good
There
point.
we go.
Yeah.
That's right. Working inside. That's true. But I thought about that. You guys brought up zombies, and it's like, well, zombies, and it's not meant to disorganized or open shop labor, right? But when you think of just general laborers on a site, is a zombie the ideal one?
No, he's gonna shuffle around a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted that, but I kind of like on the superintendent front, I was kind of leaning towards a werewolf as a good superintendent, right? Because werewolves are like a bit of everything, right? When you really think about them as a Halloween monster, they're smart, they're fast, they're agile, they're strong, right? They're angry, you know what I mean? They can move great distances in very short periods of time, and but once again, and they can work in the daylight too. I guess they're not beholden to being in the dark, unless I got my Halloween lore wrong. What do you guys?
No,
think?
they're not beholden in the dark, but they
better in
can
the dark, but yeah.
transform at a full moon. So
right,
yes, there is that. And I have to put this out there just because it's Halloween, and I have to say, do they have the silver bullet on site for all the solutions to make the site come together?
Yes, it's in a do not break in case of emergency, in case of werewolf.
In case of wild werewolf. Yeah.
It's in the site office, yeah.
Just in case they get out of line, it's true.
Yeah, it's true.
And remember, Lindsay, of course, that there are 3 days of the full moon some months, so you can get at least that much work out of the werewolf.
That's
that's true. And it would, exactly. There, I was just thinking about the scheduling. Once again, something else that has to be bargained in, right? Around deliverables, that probably efficiency would increase those 3 days out of the month with him as superintendent.
Now, the other thing is, of course, these characters aren't working for cash.
No, they're not. They have definitely other agendas.
Exactly. So you'd be working on a whole other kind of pay scale here.
How about Frankenstein? Did somebody talk about Frankenstein?
No, not yet.
He's a construction project in and of himself, so.
I actually think he's pretty ideal. I mean, he's been created by the creator, and then he pretty much just does whatever the creator says. So he's probably an ideal employee.
He's also a walking, talking example of IPD. So,
Yes.
Or of lean construction. Because all these parts working together.
Good point.
Very good point. Yeah, I could dig that.
The other thing that I did mention to you guys a little while ago, though, is that one of the things we're talking about on construction sites now is acceptance of everybody, respectful workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing is that when we are talking about incorporating Frankenstein monster, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, and zombies, we need to have inclusive language.
True.
So that they don't feel unwelcome while they're working.
But that goes both ways. They can't get out of line either. So
Yes. So the thing is that we can't. I mean, is it wrong to call them dead? Is that offensive?
Is it
No,
wrong
that's
to
a whole
call them
can of worms.
monsters? I mean,
Yeah.
monster doesn't necessarily have a positive connotation to it. And is that really fair? I don't know.
No, you can't
think
have a
Sesame Street.
trailer marked monsters for them to go into. And no.
Sesame Street has done a lot to bring tolerance to monsters, because every cute felt thing we love is a monster on that show, and they say it outright. So I think that's helped us out with that.
Oh, I would agree with that, Warren. That is very true.
Exactly. As somebody with toddlers,
Yes.
my toddler.
Oh, yes. A lot of Sesame Street. It's true.
Yeah.
And Cookie Monster, hello.
Exactly. And that man's a hero to all of
Yeah,
us.
he really is.
Right. So when you look at construction in the end, I'll float this out here. We didn't actually discuss this as part of our podcast potential discussion points, but what do you guys think are the things that scare people in construction the most? I mean, besides, obviously safety is always the biggest thing, right? That's what scares everybody. We want everybody to come home. You always hear that, and it's true. We hear it collectively. But what are some of the other kind of items that happen in construction, like that you think keep people, quote unquote, up at night? I think about stuff like change orders. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
I was going to say procurement, what probably does. And that's why I thought maybe vampires would make good owners, because they can just sit there eternally and keep asking for changes.
That's true. They really could. I would say not getting paid. I think that is a big problem in the industry. So I would say that, prompt payment, there may be some idea for paranormal prompt payment. And should you not pay your trades on time, you may get haunted or something to that effect.
You get ghosted, actually, in fact.
Actually, it happens. Yeah. So good point.
I was thinking it's something we'll talk about a little later too. I think labor crunch is an issue. You know what I mean? That keeps guys up at night around scheduling and keeps them nervous overall.
Somebody thinks about labor crunch a lot? Godzilla.
That's true.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he does. Those short little arms, but he could still pick up those construction workers and push them into his jaws.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a curveball in here. Here's something that older members of a crew are scared of: the lawnmower man, because he represents technology run amok. Now that's diving deep, baby.
That is going back, Warren.
But very applicable, because we've seen it during the pandemic in particular, right? How many stories have we written? How many discussions have we had about the evolution of, tech and innovation in construction, and
we see where it ends with bad CG from the 90s.
Oh, yeah, very true.
And so, Peter, you've written this story. For your next story, potentially, what would you like to do?
I would love to go to an actual reported haunted construction site and see for myself. And I may be opening myself up to influences from beyond this dimension. If I do that, I realize that there's a risk, but I really want to see it for myself.
That seems reasonable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. You may have some guests that go along with you. I would love to do that. I think that would be awesome.
I can go virtually on somebody's phone and then be that last. I'll be the final girl, in fact.
Actually, we all could just go virtually these days. You know what? Let's set up a Teams call there, and there you go.
Or just use security cameras on the site. There you go.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, I'd be remiss. We talked about scary stuff, and in reality, it's not a joking matter. Kind of the supply chain issues that construction is encountering, the labor crunch that construction is encountering in light of schedules being impacted by supply chain issues. That's scary stuff, but that's reality. And we've been covering it, with our publications and our podcast. But we also, as a company, as Construct, we've organized an economic webcast that's kind of key. It's for the fall 2021 period. It's going to be held November 3rd at 1 p.m. We'll include the registration link in the show notes of this podcast. So if you want to link into and attend that webinar, you could do that via the show notes attached to the pod. But what's happening on this webcast is there are going to be 3 chief economists One, Ken Simonson from Associated General Contractors of America. There'll be Alex Carrick, Chief Economist with Construct Connect. There will be a representative from the American Institute of Architects. And they're going to engage in an in-depth discussion on what's in store for construction in 2022, because in the end, there's market demand, which is robust, but there's challenges with materials and scheduling, which are driving costs and squeezing margins. So if you want to learn a little bit more about what these three experts have to say, we have the webcast for you. Once again, it's on November 3rd at 1 p.m. To register for that webcast, look at the show notes attached to this podcast and register and attend. If you can't make it, a recording will be sent to you, but as long as you've registered for the webcast. With that, folks, it's a scary world out there. I know we have a little bit of fun every year with the Halloween stories and now the Halloween pod. Always looking for feedback. What did we miss as far as spooky Halloween stuff? Let us know. Send us, include it in the comments section. But thank you all for sharing your spooky insight as far as
no problem at all.
The monster construction crew, right?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Peter, as always, for submitting your story. You guys can check it out today, October 29th, on the DCN and JOC websites. We'll also be pushing it out on social media, too. So be sure to take a look at what he's written, and I can't wait for next year's.
If you want to listen to other episodes of the Construction Record Podcast or TCR Express, you can hear them on Apple Music, Spotify, or Amazon Music, or on the Daily Commercial News and the Journal of Commerce websites. Happy Halloween, everyone.
This episode of the Construction Record is brought to you by the Greater Toronto Sewer and Water Main Contractors Association. Clean water, our goal, our future.